Hi again, it's me, Cinnamon. I'm a 24-year-old working a corporate job who loves all things personal finance, especially budgeting, and today I'll be budgeting my second paycheck of July. So I actually budgeted my first paycheck of July off camera. I was sick around that time, so I wasn't feeling good to budget on camera. And I'll recap some of the stuff that I did then. As always, I covered my next month's holding, and then I was able to contribute to my general sinking fund holding category. So I have to finish this off with this paycheck. One thing I did want to call out is that my ready to assign amount is $4,901.87, and this is lower than my normal ready to assign amount. And my next paycheck is going to be even lower. And so let's see if I can go here and capture why that is. So normally the past few months I've been getting my normal base salary paid out, and it's been the same amount with plus or minus 1 cent, and also getting my signing bonus paid out. And so with this paycheck, I got less of my signing bonus paid out because it was just the remainder amount that needs to be paid out. I'm completely paid out now, and going forward, I'm not going to be getting any more of these payments. I'm just going to be getting this base salary payment. So I already used ADP to calculate it all, and with not getting my bonus paid out anymore, my ready to assign amount is going to go down by around $600 after tax. And with it going down around $600, I actually will not be able to budget the way I've been budgeting in the past, where I was able to cover my next month's expenses with just one paycheck, which I thought was a really nice setup, of course. So it is going to take me 2 paychecks to cover my next month's spending. So I don't know how that's going to affect my videos, but yeah, that's just something to know about. Okay, now that I've clarified all of that, let's get into the budgeting. So first I'm going to cover my overspending, and as normal I have some overspending for my HSA and 401k contribution. I keep them on budget, and it's really easy for me to track how close to those goals I am and if I'm behind. And you can see right now I'm still behind, but once I get my third paycheck for July, I'll be all caught up, and these bars should be green going forward. Okay. Lastly, I need to top off my holding category for my sinking funds, and that's with $727. I just deleted what I applied before and just added the total amount. I just think that's easier sometimes if I don't have any complex math I need to apply. So now I'm completely done with my budgeting. I have some overspending here, and that is due to getting a notice from California that I owed some in my state taxes, but I already paid what I owed, and I just was really frantic at the moment and did not check my log. So I paid it again and then called them and was able to clarify the issue. It was really frustrating because that call took many hours to get through, and yeah, I don't know, that can be really frustrating. But I will be getting a check back for my overpayment, and so I'm just going to leave this as overspent until I cash that check. The last thing I need to do is put aside what I'll be investing with this paycheck, and that's $3,732.55. And let me see how that compared to last month. So it's pretty on par with last month, even though I guess between the 2 second paychecks, it only went down by $500. So this is pretty on par. And because I'm getting a third paycheck, I'll be able to boost my way onto my goals a little bit, and I'll have to recalculate again if I can hit these goals realistically, but that'll be something that provides me that boost for this month. So now that that is done, I wanted to get into what I wanted to talk about in this video as well, which is something that I need to figure out if I'm going to do with my life. So I have a new trip. I know for a fact, I said in one of my videos I don't like to travel, and this month I'm traveling a bunch. This year I'm traveling a bunch. I did get a travel credit card because I did expect a lot of travel this year, but I am exhausted by it, especially after getting sick on my last trip. I got sick with food poisoning. Food poisoning is the code word, by the way. That is what I'm learning. I've heard a lot of people say in the past they had food poisoning, and I just thought it was a little bit of, an upset stomach. Now I know what food poisoning really is, and what? People just randomly get this going to restaurants? Oh my god. Anyway, so I got food poisoning, and so I was really tired out, And right when I was like going through that era, my favorite K-pop group announced a tour. Unfortunately, it is not a world tour, it is just an Asia tour. And I really want to go to the dates in Korea because they're a K-pop group. I want the experience in Korea. Um, guys, that concert is in 2 weeks. I have not put in any PTO for 2 weeks. I've also just been coming off using a lot of PTO. Am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? One idea is that I quit my job. That is like my main idea of how to solve this problem. Because, yeah, sometimes I just go extreme. So I wanted to quit my job before this concert was announced, and I was like gonna do that out of anger. But I was gonna stay until my stock payout, and because I stayed for 2 months after, the anger just sort of dissipated. I just got used to it. I'm like, okay, fine, I guess I can do this for longer. But now I'm like, if I quit my job, I get to just like go to Korea and have a super good time and just like live my life. Nothing sounds better than that. Nothing sounds better than that, really. So, you know what I'm doing? I'm crunching the numbers. Is this a realistic option? And that's where I get into these categories that I don't talk about that much anymore in my budget, which are my emergency funds. So, the way I set it up in my budget is that I like to capture a few different kinds of emergencies. So, a bike emergency, home emergency, these are my deductibles for my insurance, medical emergency, my medical out of pocket max, and my deductibles for my vision and dental insurance. I also have like emergency cash money spread across my accounts, so cash, checking, and my savings. This doesn't really make sense anymore because my savings account is effectively a checking account. There's no like real restrictions on how many times I can withdraw and stuff like that. And I also don't always keep this $100 in cash because I don't like having cash, but I do actually have more than $100 in cash right now. So this was just the division I like to have split up. And with my emergency savings, I have 3 months of expenses covered. So all in all, this adds up to $15,640, which is more than 3 months of expenses. Additionally, after when I first started working, I put in $10,000 into iBonds. That had a 7.9% APY at the time. So when it hit the year mark, I was able to get $10,790. I could have kept it in iBonds, but also within that year, my industry's like job market completely changed. Tech was hiring a bunch and it went to layoffs and all of the things you guys have probably seen on the news. So I made the decision then to like sit on this money before throwing it back into the market. And I added $10 to just round it off to be another 3 month emergency fund. So between these two categories, I have a 6 month emergency fund, and across everything, I have more than a 6 month emergency fund. Another thing I factored into quitting my job is that I have some savings for sinking funds, particularly, most notably, for my surgery sinking fund. Um, the funny thing about the surgery sinking fund is that why I started saving money in the first place when I was in college, it was for getting a new job. I actually wanted to get some other things done, so I ended up saving a lot of money. And because I had done that when I started working, and I realized, oh my god, you need to prepare for your emergency expenses, I just shifted all of that savings to an emergency fund. Now we're kind of coming back full circle where I might be using my nose job fund again as an emergency fund. So ideally, I wouldn't do that because I think during the time I'm not working, transitioning between careers, nobody knows what I look like. I can just leave one job with one face, come to another job with a new face. That's like my dream. So I ideally would get the no job during my time of unemployment. But again, if I really wanted to stretch my unemployment, this is something I would dip into. So across all of these categories, I have like 12 months of expenses saved up. Let's just actually add it up so I can just do this math very simply. So yeah, here's what I have saved up, which is over 12 months of expenses. And if I were to quit my job, I could also lower my expenses. Right now, this $3,600 I estimate for my monthly spending is actually an overestimate because, as you can see by how built up all of my core spending categories are, I haven't been really spending this money. And now, although I don't want to count on this too much, now that I don't necessarily always eat out that much because, like, I know I can cook more if I have the free time, and my boyfriend enjoys cooking a lot more, and we would have more meals together if I wasn't going to work. I could cut back on my food expenses too. So once I added in all of those factors, I have a runway of about 15 months. Doing that math, was drafting the resignation letter. It was taking everything in me to wait until my stock payment came out before getting into the next meeting with my manager, which happened like a little bit right before my stock payment came out, where we were talking about the whole frustrating situation again. To not be like, yeah, actually, I wanted to talk to you. I don't want to go through the promotion process anymore. I will be putting my 2 weeks. It's been a great opportunity. I don't know what people say when they quit. It was taking everything out of me not to just do that. But then I realized something really important, which I feel like is not talked about enough, which is that your emergency fund is more than money. And outside of money, I was not prepared in any way, shape, or form for a real emergency. Okay, let's get into it. But before we get into it, I wanted to show a little bit of math. I love math, and I wanted to show a little bit of math that speaks to the monetary part of building an emergency fund, because of course that is important, right? Money is the flattening out of a bunch of resources. If you need housing, food, medical stuff, you can pay for that with money regardless of what skills you have. So of course it is important, and I wanted to briefly speak on that. Okay, so I made a little graphic. Graphic design is my passion. No, mathematics is actually my passion, guys. I made some graphics. So this is my toy model, a really simple setup. This is your total income. 50% of it is going to your spending, 50% of it is going to your savings. In this situation, which is the situation I used to pretty much be in before my signing bonus stopped getting paid out, 1 month of savings could cover 1 month of spending. And I really like this situation because every month I worked felt like I was buying myself a month of freedom. It's such an easy, like, one-to-one relationship that takes a load off all the math you have to do when building the financial part of your emergency fund. But of course, the situation is not realistic for everyone, so I wanted to show a different situation. Oops, I'm spoiling things. Let's pull this up. So in this different situation, I've moved this line of demarcation between your spending and your savings. Now you are spending 80% of your income and saving 20% of your income. And this is a situation you would be in if you were following the 50-30-20 rule, right? And this is a great situation to be in. In this situation, we see that you need to save for 4 months to cover 1 month of spending, right? And when you expand that out to a 6-month emergency fund, you now need to save for 24 months or 2 years to make that 6-month emergency fund. That is still really good, right? A lot of financial goals, you have to think at a long time horizon. So that is still really good. But something that really excites me about building an emergency fund is that it is a super linear process. One other way of saying that is that you can make a 1% change and it will have more than a 1% impact. And because of that, you can make a lot of small changes that can help you build your emergency fund faster if that's something you're interested in. So this brings me to my third and final example. Okay, guys, if you didn't like the graphics, this is the last one. Okay. So as you can see, I moved this boundary line here now. It's a little bit of an ambiguous spot because I didn't want to make this bar too long, but here would be the 70% line, and so this is the 75% line. So that means now you're spending 75% of your income and saving 25% of your income. In this case, 75 divided by 25 is 3. So you need to do 3 months of savings to cover 1 month of spending. That doesn't maybe seem like a big difference, but when you scale that out to a 6 month emergency fund, you only need to save for 18 months to build your 6 month emergency fund, a year and a half. That is a massive difference with only a 5% change. And the intuition behind why this is a super linear process is because you're pulling two levers at once. When you decrease your spending, you're also pulling the lever of increasing your savings. So if you decrease your spending, right, but you also didn't increase your savings, it would take you less time to build an emergency fund because you would have less spending that you need to cover. But when you also increase your savings, it would take you even less time to build the emergency fund because you have more money that you can put towards doing that. It's really intuitive, but I feel like sometimes this like super linearity of building an emergency fund isn't talked about enough. And this is something that personally motivates me to really watch this bar, how my spending relates to my savings. Because when you move these things just a little bit, they can have pretty big impacts and you can make that really work for you. So that is my little side note on the superlinearity of building your emergency fund. And there's a lot of superlinearity in financial processes. One of them that you're probably familiar with is like the idea of compound interest, right? But that idea can be applied to a lot of things. And yeah, I want to make a video sharing all of those things because math is so fun, guys. Okay, but back to the budget. Back to not the numbers. How could a $45,000 emergency fund or $44,000 emergency fund not be enough? Well, at least in my case, it's not enough because one, I'm not prepared. I have not done enough things in my life to prepare me for job loss. For example, the example that sold me on not quitting my job, well, it hasn't really sold me, but it's the main thing that's holding me back from not quitting my job, is that I'm not prepared to get a new job. In my industry, interviewing is intense. It requires a lot of technical knowledge that is sometimes different from what you're using on the job. And you kind of have to study that in parallel to doing the job. And you have to make sure your interviewing skills don't atrophy. Right now, I have no interviewing skills. If I lost my job today, I would not be able to apply to a job tomorrow. I would not be able to apply to a job for at least 3 months because that is how much time it would take for me to ramp up on what I need to know to interview successfully. So that means my 6 month emergency fund is really only a 3 month emergency fund because I can't realistically get a new job in the first 3 months. Another thing that makes me not prepared is that I don't have a driver's license. I don't know how to drive. It's not even just that I don't have a license. And the reason why I call that out specifically is because in my case, that keeps me from being able to access the gig economy. I'm missing some fundamental like life skills, right? And maybe for me, that's not knowing how to drive. For you, that might be not knowing how to cook well, and that makes you reliant on eating out. It might be a number of things that kind of make you not prepared. Some other ways that I'm not prepared is that I have not been to a doctor in 3 years. I really never think about my health too much because I'm a very healthy person. I rarely ever get sick. Like, I when I say rarely ever get sick, I'm talking since the last time I was sick, it's been 6 years. And that was getting a fever one time in college. And before that, that is the first time I've had a fever since I was probably a baby. I don't know if I had fevers when I was a baby. My mom has never, shared that with me. But that was like my first fever ever, guys. So I'm very healthy. But getting sick with food poisoning, which means way more than what it entails. Oh my God. I didn't even know when all these people were casually talking about their food poisoning, what they were going through. Getting sick with that, I've been paying way more attention to my health. And I think it would be probably smart for me to see a doctor before, I quit my job and possibly find out I have some health issues that might make it harder for me to get privately insured and all of those things. Like, not prepared, guys. Obviously, there's so many ways for me to counter this: prepping for interviews, learning how to drive, going to see a doctor, and doing a bunch of other things to just preventatively take care of myself. So these are things to think about outside of your emergency fund to prepare you for emergencies. This is a little relevant to me because my area does get natural disasters like earthquakes. But if an earthquake happened, I wouldn't even know how to deal. My friends who grow up in like Tornado Alley, they have kids in their house to make them resilient to whatever the tornado might have in store. And that can translate into having to pay less money when a natural disaster might hit. So I'm just giving some examples that are coming to my mind, but I'm sure you could expand this to other ways that you can prepare for emergencies in your life. Preparedness relates a little bit to the like second level of preparing for emergencies is just having life skills. Okay? One of the things I'm the most sad about in my like generation is that we were not having home economics, we were not having these life skill classes, but I cannot sew, I cannot change a tire. What? This is on me now. I'm 24. I can teach myself these things. Well, I'm going to first learn how to drive before I learn how to change a tire. But if you're someone with a car, think about all the life skills you can develop to make you more resilient to certain kinds of car emergencies. And finally, the last kind of a resource that can build up your emergency fund that is not monetary is or are relationships. Growing up, my mom had such a vast community of people around her. I don't necessarily always know like what was going on at the time, but my mom was probably going through stuff. I don't know what to say. She will not tell me. But whenever she like couldn't take care of us for whatever reason, we had neighbors who would bring us food, watch us after school, like all of these things, right? She had this robust community of support. And at times we were that support system for other families. I don't really know who I would call in an emergency. I think this is really common, especially for like my generation, that people don't necessarily have these close friendships, they don't have these like deep communities that they can rely on. Not only my generation, I also think like when I check that against um, just like American culture versus like, you know, coming from an immigrant background and having that culture, it's completely different. Like I can definitely see, you know, if I still lived in New York City in my immigrant community, I would have that kind of support system. But having moved out of New York, I'm making friends here for sure, but I don't necessarily have people I feel so much I can rely on. The only person is my boyfriend, but like, you know, it feels different. It feels different when that person's like a boyfriend versus like a community. I have been in many social environments and I've just like moved away from everything. I've moved away from the vast majority of people I went to high school with, where I grew up. I've moved away from where I went to college. Um, and a lot of the people in that space, even now living in a pretty popular area, because I chose to live in like more of the suburban parts of NorCal, I'm still not, I don't have that much access to the few people from college that I know who are working in my area. Like, I thought it was so common for people to leave their hometown and leave their college town and all of these things, but I realized that actually a lot of people I know stayed back or returned to where, you know, they came from. And because of that, they have robust communities that they can rely on. And I don't. And I don't know how I'm going to solve that one. But I think something that is important is now that I have resources, trying to make sure that I'm a resource for other people and just building a culture of mutual aid with the people I do know now and making that more normalized, making it more normalized for my friends to ask me for things when they're in tough spots so that I know that it could be reciprocated, right? Like we have built that foundation with each other. Okay, actually talking through, I feel like I did solve this for myself. I don't have this today, but yeah, all of those things make me feel like I can't quit. Actually, as I listed them out, I'm like, girl, you want to quit your job to go to a K-pop concert? I'd rather just not show up to work for that week and have my manager be like, where are you? And be like, oh my god, you didn't see my PTO. That is what my last coworker did to our old manager, and she did not get fired. So yeah, that might be the answer. I really want to go to this concert, guys. guys, the finances of this concert are, they're gonna like mess me up a little bit, but I actually value this group so much. I don't care that much. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. I am exploring, talking about more topics in my videos, and I only have the concern now, like I have so many topics that I want to talk about. My main concern now is how can I make this engaging for you guys when I'm still not comfortable like getting on camera and things, and I don't have an animation skills. So let me know if you have any ideas for that. Comment down below other things that you feel like make you resilient to emergencies that are non-monetary, because I know this is a personal finance channel, but I feel like we would be remiss to not realize how important all these other components are. And if you want to forgo these components as part of your emergency funds, you might need to be tripling your emergency fund, really. So think about this as a way to save money, if that helps you. Anyway, thank you so much, and bye.